A pair of titties that make you stand up and beg for buttermilk. Ass like a 10-year-old boy. I'm Liam, this is Rob, and this week we are joined by special guest Dave Auld for our look back at the James Cameron movie that nobody talks about, despite the fact it's the most expensive movie all time when it was released, despite it being a commercial and critical hit, and well, despite it actually being pretty damn awesome. I mean, is the reason this movie isn't talked about so much simply down to the quality and unbelievable box office of all the other James Cameron movies? I mean, after all, this was sandwiched between T2 and Titanic, and whatever you think of those films, they're massive. And it's like, you look back at James Cameron's CV, I know we have different feelings about James Cameron, but I still stand by the fact that he might have the most consistent CV, possibly of all time. And in terms of box office, it can't be argued. And this film, massive hit, did really well. Nobody talks about it. But I guess, how do you feel about it now? Because it's a strange film to go back to in many respects.
I mean, there's a reason why this film doesn't get talked about. It's very forgettable. I forgot a lot about this film and then rewatched it. And I did. One of the first things I had written down, and I was hoping to bring it up just out of the blue, but you already mentioned it in your intro. If you're in a nightclub and you're talking to your friend and you go, oh my God, that woman over there is fucking smoking ass like a 10-year-old boy. What the fuck is that?
That, right, just to be clear, and there's a lot of stuff in this where the sexual politics of this film are all over the place. They're strange. It feels like everybody involved in this movie was going through a divorce. I know Tom Arnold was, but it felt like everyone was. It almost feels a little bit nasty at times. But make no mistake, that line was weird as shit in 1994. It wasn't like, oh, well, that hasn't aged well. No, it never aged. It was never a thing people said, ass like a 10-year-old boy. Like, that's a good thing. It was I cannot believe that made it into the final cut of the movie.
You're right. It's definitely a movie of its time. It's very misogynistic, and there's lots of, say, forgettable quotes like that. But, you know, it is what it is, isn't it? You know, it hasn't aged particularly well, but, you know, it still made me laugh.
Oh, yeah, there was...
Oh, yeah.
But I think there were things on it that made me laugh that shouldn't have made me laugh. Like the villain's choice of hair and five-head combination. Like, as soon as he came on screen and you're meant to be terrified of this, and the fucking name of their outfit, the Crimson Jihad. It sounds like a brothel in their area, isn't it? Like, the Jihad have their own brothel, the Crimson Jihad.
I think you've been a little bit harsh. I mean, I will give you... The thing is, that's another thing which has aged quite poorly, is their views and the representation of Middle Easterners in this film. But make no mistake, especially at the end of the film, and it's one of the things Bethan brought up, she was like, they're supposed to be in America, yeah? And you assume they've been in America and now they're coming together as Crimson Jihad. It's like, there was no attempt to blend in. It's like, you know, when they went to, the Florida Keys, like, oh, well, don't forget your headscarves and dodgy Middle Eastern garb. It's like they all went to, like, the Middle Eastern branch of Giacomo just before they went to try and blow up the United States. And it's such a strange choice.
Especially the limo driver guy. Like, he was the only dude in that weird suit.
Dude, if you got in a limo and he was driving, even now, you'd be like, listen, I know this is weird, and I know people are going to say that I'm racist, but I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm just fucking not, dude. You just look so much like a terrorist.
Didn't you? He was a fat Nish Kumar.
He was like him. He was a bit. Although I think he'd been a little bit unfair on Aziz.
Art Malik.
Art Malik. I actually think, and it's one of the reasons I think this movie works so well, and I know you might have different opinions, is a big part of it is the tone. And the fact that it's an action comedy, but it does both parts equally well. And not only that, like, nothing feels tonally out of place. Like, you think a lot of action comedies, they either go too far for the comedy or the action's there, but nothing, you know, they don't kind of push the boat out far enough in terms of like the farce aspect of it. This does both elements of it really well. And one of the reasons it works is Art Malik, I think, is a genuinely threatening villain for an action comedy. If you have an action comedy, usually the bad guy is like a bit of a buffoon. In this, you're like, you know, he comes in, slaps the shit out of Tia Carrere. You're like, this guy's fucking for real. And for the most part, until the end, when he, you know, gets his crotch caught on the end of a plane, plays it very straight, plays it as a traditional villain. And again, I think that's maybe one of the reasons I think this film works.
You said I was being unfair on him. I never said anything about him. I think I agree with you. He was threatening. No. I agree with you. He played it straight. Mm-hmm. It's just the fact you look at this dude and his hair is starting in the middle of his head. And it's out there and it's curly. He looks like Sideshow Bob, like Jihad Sideshow Bob. Like
it looks even worse when there's a weird scene. It's a great action sequence when Arnie's riding the horse and he's riding the motorcycle and he jumps off the edge of the building on the bike and lands in the pool. When he gets out of the pool, I don't think anybody has ever looked wetter. I don't know how. He just looks so incredibly wet. And it's like, maybe it's only because he's got like that half head of hair. It just looks all the more dramatic. So that sounded a lot more pornographic than
the way he pushes it back as well as he gets up.
So wet. I was like, I don't think you could be wetter if you were literally consumed in a body of water. It's very odd. But so
let's nail this down, right? In regards to this being the action comedy, but it's meant to be. I was going to say Tom Arnold. No, it's Tom Arnold, isn't it? Yeah,
it's Tom
Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah. I was trying to get Arnold Schwarzenegger. I was going to say
there's too many Arnolds in this, isn't it?
So Arnold Schwarzenegger is meant to be your family man, fucking secret spy. How are you not going to know that dude should not be a computer salesman? You look at him. And you think
he's a bit too jacked. It's the same problem where they have the scene where he's like draped in the famous scene with Jamie Lee Curtis in the striptease. It's like, even if he is draped in shadow, look at his silhouette. I would know it was Arnie just by the shape of his hands. He's got those big fucking gorilla mitts, hasn't he? It's like, clearly he's not just working on computers all day. She's like, when are you going to the gym exactly? Because you're fucking ginormous. I mean, they do try and hide it in some of the dodgy 90s clobber, you know, like they're all big suits and stuff like that. Yeah. But surely when he gets into bed and he takes off his top, she's like, Jesus fucking Christ, when did this happen? Do they have a gym at work? This is ludicrous. But the thing is that the opposite end of that argument is you totally believe that Jamie Lee Curtis is like a totally kind of like doddery mum. Like if you unless you've seen Perfect, the movie with John Travolta, or you've seen Trading Places, which we have, if you're going into this film and you don't know anything about Jamie Lee Curtis, you believe that she's just like a whatever mum in this film. You totally do. It is the best hot girl reveal, I think, of all time, legitimately.
Yeah, but is she hot?
They do a good job of keeping her plain. And then when she does the dance, and the whole is she hot thing, because she is going up against who was one of my teen crushes, Tia Carrera.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, fucking hell, thanks for making me watch this film just for Tia Carrera again. I mean, she is smoking, even to this day and age. She is awesome.
Well, she holds a special place in a lot of people's hearts of our age.
Yeah.
She is.
It all goes back to Wayne's World, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, she was having a dollar year, wasn't she, with 94? Because Wayne's World 2, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and got like Relic Hunter as well.
Relic Hunter was late 90s and stuff.
But that's the thing. She's like she couldn't have played that role, or if she had, it would have been the same as all these other reveals. I always think back to again, like God, what the hell's it called? She's All That. Where they go, oh, you know, pick the ugly girl and we'll transform her into the hot girl. And they're clearly always smoking hot. Like, there's something about Jamie Lee Curtis where she can look just like everyday enough. Like, I think it is in her face because she's not the most classically beautiful woman in the world. Yeah. And I think, but it isn't just her hotness, it's in her performance. Like, even when she kind of like finally rips the dress, like slicks back her hair and stuff, when she's doing the dance, because of her talent for physical comedy, she still looks awkward. And you're just like, well, she's got this smoking body, but she's still not hot. But then when she suddenly turns it on and I have my 12-year-old sexual, awakening, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening in this film.
And when what she does, she's like a porn star from the neck down and your mum from the neck up. And that's not a combination that I want.
There
is definite... in this film in particular, there's definitely a touch of that.
I mean, I go for it like if she looked like your mum from the neck up. It's fine.
All right, I'll take your mum from the neck down then.
But I agree with you. Like, I don't know if I would go as far as you put on social media. This was many boys' sexual awakening. I don't think that. But she is like when
I think it was for me. Sometimes it's just a timing thing, though. Like I'm 12 years old. I'm watching this, and you don't. Like, whatever you might think of Jamie Lee Curtis, the scene is so much sexier than you expect it to be. Like, because she's still dancing. Like, she sits at the top. Like,
I think, and maybe now from my 40-year-old head thinking about it, I can't get the fact that she's trying to be sexy while you have the most lecherous man on the planet sat in shadow on a chair staring at her. Like, how many times did he remake a
with his Sony Walkman instead of, again, this is such a 90s film. He doesn't have like a voice modulator or anything. He's just got his Walkman.
He's just got a tape.
Which they always manage to rewind it perfectly every single time. It's like Home Alone all over again, isn't it?
But of course, there's nothing sexier than the French. It's like, that's what makes it sexy. It's like, no, do it doucement. Do it very slowly. It's all ridiculous. It's such a 90s film.
Kisses her. Mm-hmm. If you were blindfolded, would you recognize a kiss from your partner?
You would if it was Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger kisses
logs.
Yeah.
Well, I know, like
that was a wet kiss. Like he looks like he just produces a lot of saliva. As he's, I mean, you're usually addicted to people's mouths in this podcast, but I don't know, Schwarzenegger.
Schwarzenegger is a very aggressive kisser on screen, and there's just no way you don't know. Like, if you've been kissed by Schwarzenegger, I assume you don't forget. So, and the thing is, even after that, she kisses him. I know she's like in a bit of a panic, but she hits him over the head, and he's making all the classic irony noises. She still doesn't know who it is. But it all comes back to the fact. But it all comes back to the fact that, like, I think it was Cameron described this film as a metaphor for modern marriage, and it is in many respects. I totally get that. But in terms of a genre, at times it feels more like a farce. It really does, and I mean that in the genre sense of the word, rather than me being critical in any way. Yeah, well, not quite a parody, more of a classic farce. And obviously this is based on the original is a French movie, La Totale, and the French love a farce. Like, that's one of the, so many French movies are farces by design, kind of thing. And it really comes through in this. And I know there's a lot of similarities between the French original and this. And I like the fact that they go that far down the comedy route. This isn't like, like we did Demolition Man last week. And some people would argue that that's a comedy. That's an action film with funny bits. This movie, like, there's the famous scene where Jamie Lee Curtis drops the Uzi down the stairs. It's an utterly ludicrous scene where it falls down the stairs, it shoots all the guys, they all go running into scene. I know you might hate it, I get it.
Yeah, we're both shaking our heads. It was a terrible scene.
Well, I actually thought it was like amazing that they made it work in this film, because it's such a ludicrous scene. And then 2 minutes later, they go to a very, I think it's Aziz, is like trying to blow him up with a rocket launcher, and all of a sudden it's like a very traditional action sequence.
Yeah, up until the point, like, I get what you're saying, but up until the point then, after he does it, he gives himself like a personal high five. Like,
but that, again, that's the kind of leaning back into comedy. And
but no, that scene, that was absolutely ridiculous. I wouldn't have even had that in the fucking.
Surely if the gun was going off, she'd have shot herself.
She was shot everywhere, but they all ran into the line of fire. That Uzi's not getting me from here. Let me just run over here. Like, fuck,
But but that's the thing, though. It so plays it for like it's so self-aware in that sequence. It's not like, the Uzi has just happened to like shoot down everyone. Like, the joke is they're all running into the screen. It's like in even though it's not a comedy in the same way, like John Wick 4 when he falls down the stairs, and we're all like, I can't believe he's falling down the stairs again. But then there's another set of stairs, and all of a sudden it becomes very self-aware, and you're like, okay, we know how silly this is. And it's kind of like that here. It's like, well, we can get away with this because this is a ludicrous movie with a ludicrous sense of humor. So I think if they had half-assed that sequence, it wouldn't have worked. But the fact that guys just kept running into the line of fire meant that it kind of did. But I'm not going to argue.
Of all the things that made me laugh in this film, and it's really random, the one thing that made me really laugh out loud. At the beginning of the film, when he's walking through that embassy, and he's talking to all these people like he knows them, he goes to the colonel and goes, "Oh, Colonel, how are you? I haven't seen you for a while." Then he speaks to somebody in French, then in German, and all this thing. And he speaks to this one guy, and I can't remember what he says, but the subtitles come on, and it's what he said. And then right underneath it just goes, "Perfect Arabic." Why do you need that?
No, again, though, I think that's a joke. I think they're making it clear that his Arabic is far from fucking perfect.
It's so fucking, it's ridiculous. That shouldn't have made me laugh, but it did, I must admit.
The first thing I noticed when he was coming out of the ice, it looks like he's using a bread knife.
Yeah,
that is not a combat knife. It was round on the end, and it comes up the water. You think, it's just made a sandwich. Is he now coming out the water?
Is that ice all year round? Because they had the gate under the ice as well as above the ice, because he was cutting under the gate underneath. So I didn't know, like, it just felt really weird, that the whole thing. And the fact, once again, you get the perfect tuxedo moment from the wetsuit. Like, not...
Yeah, but that was clearly that whole opening sequence is just like, I'm going to make a mini Bond movie.
Yeah,
that's all that was. It was just like, I'm going to make a Bond movie starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I'm just going to have it for the opening sequence of the film. And he kind of pulls it off. You know, you have the guys in the classic white suits, the snowmobiles. It's all Bond as fuck, you know. But you know, I was going to say, but more comedic. Is it any more comedic than a Roger Moore James Bond film? Probably not.
No.
I would argue though that it's maybe, as good as that action sequence is, it doesn't compare with the ones later in. Like, obviously, the famous one is arguably the horse chase versus the bike, which is, again, massively influential. Like, you've seen it since it's John Wick 3, basically. I mean, this film's actually, a lot of it feels familiar because of the influences out of other films. Like, the bathroom scene feels very Mission Impossible Fallout. The chase feels very John Wick 3. The bridge scene feels just like Mission Impossible 3. And the whole movie feels very much like Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Only, I would argue, better. But, you know, I suppose.
The mansion scene is the start of the terrible amount of bad Arnold Schwarzenegger stunt actors.
Oh, my God. Thank you.
I get it. He must be a really difficult man to replicate from stunt. You know, there's people who you can just say, yeah, that's close enough. You probably won't notice. But every time something was like, even just running down a snowy bank, you're like, that's a man in what looks like a Michael Myers hat.
Did you recognize? I say, Rick, you're not going to. It was a stunt double when the horse jumps into the water whilst the five head guy is getting on the lift. Mm-hmm. That was a stunt double.
You can just say Aziz. It's fine.
Aziz, okay. I couldn't think of his name. That is a stunt double, but his nose, his fake prosthetic nose, is a different color to the rest of the face. It's
bad.
Ridiculously out. And that horse chase scene as well, right? The one thing that, like, if they had subtitles for the horse going, it would clearly say at the bottom, fuck that. When the horse just wasn't jumping out. The horse just went, fuck that.
I just find it very surprising that a director of James Cameron's, you know, ilk would allow that many face-on shots of someone who blatantly doesn't.
I was thinking about that because I thought the exact same thing. I was like, God, it's pretty egregious. It's like one of my major issues with the movie. And I think it might be simply down to the quality, like the HD transfer for this film or 4K transfer is really good. This movie looks fantastic. However, I think a lot of those shots back in the day, if you were watching this in the cinema, you know, watching this on VHS, whatever, I suspect they wouldn't be quite as egregious. And with the transfer to HD, everything's clear and lovely, but you spot every last, you know, cut to as body double, because I can't remember that being an issue when I watched this when I was younger, but watching it now in HD, yeah, it fucking stands out like a sore thumb for sure. And it's not just a couple of times.
T2, haven't they? So yeah, the famous scene where he comes off the bridge on his bike. Yeah. So he's CG'd. But that's
based
onto it.
Yeah, but
the problem is this isn't
that's
T2.
T2. This is True Life.
Yeah,
nobody's watching.
But it was the same problem.
Oh, whoa! Nobody's watching this. But no, I appreciate. But that, to bring it back to my earlier point.
I mean, nobody knew this was on fucking Disney Plus that we said it was.
I think you're underestimating how people feel about this film. I think
you're underestimating how people feel about this film.
No, I think a lot of people really genuinely like True Lies, but the reason, like I said, I think the reason it hasn't lived on in the memory is because the whole James Cameron effect, because people just don't talk about it. Like, you know, with certain directors, you go, from the man who brought you so and so and so and so, and you're almost like, oh yeah, you made that. True Lies, as much as I like True Lies, and it is liked rather than love, nobody's going to put this on his it's never going to be on the front of his IMDb page. Nobody's going to use, the guy who made True Lies, because the guy made Titanic, he made Avatar, he made T2, T1, Aliens, like some of the most beloved, and if not beloved, some of the most successful movies of all time. There's a reason that this film just isn't going to be talked about, but I don't think it's down to the quality, which I actually think is pretty decent.
Was this the last film before he shit the bed with Titanic?
Shit the bed. You are talking about what was the biggest movie of all time, right?
It's fucking awful, isn't it? It's so.
I've never seen it.
Oh, mate, don't. It's not
awful. It is an unbelievable.
After James Cameron, he's terrible. The whole Avatar Blue Firth thing is
it's nonsense. They're amazing.
It's a magnificent spectacle of what you can do.
Yeah.
It probably should be about half the length of time. That's all.
I can see that, but I mean, it's what even Titanic. If you don't like it, which is fair enough, Titanic and Avatar are unbelievable cinematic achievements. I just think they're objective. Like even if you don't enjoy them, like what he's achieved on screen is absolutely almost unmatched. And let's be clear: if he shut the bed with Avatar and Titanic, he shut the bed with the two biggest movies of all time. Like that's what we're talking about here. Like I said, even if it's not a quality issue, this film gets drowned out by sheer box office. So even if you're not just to give Rob,
he shut the bed for Titanic.
I think Rob's being a little bit facetious, but if we accept that a lot of people feel that way, and you're like, I fucking hate Titanic, I hate Avatar. There are a lot of people who feel the same way as Rob. They're still unbelievably massive, hugely influential, regardless of how you feel about it.
They're spectacles. I just think they're not the right spectacles. They're making too much of a fuss because it's James Cameron, and it's not the James Cameron is shit podcast, because I can go on for hours about that one. It's
God's sake.
It's I think this is his downfall after this.
His downfall. He's responsible for 3 of the 4 biggest movies of all time, and you're saying it's his downfall. It's madness. It's internet chat. But anyway,
it's the best bait in the world.
It really is.
You just wind him up and let him go.
We'll talk about Tom Cruise next.
Oh well, actually, speaking of Tom Cruise, I tell you one thing. And it's a shame that they use so many body doubles, because it's a reminder of how good a runner Schwarzenegger is on screen. He's not quite in the Tom Cruise.
I wrote it down.
Such an awesome runner.
I wrote it down saying Sly was a better runner last week than Schwarzenegger was.
My wife wasn't convinced by his running either, and I said to her, no one runs well in films. Everyone looks like Phoebe. That's how it is.
You don't think they even made a point like in The Running Man? Like he just runs and they go, look at him run. They do a slow motion. He's for a big guy. You don't think he's got like a good form?
In The Running Man, he's a good runner. I mean, that was his whole shtick, wasn't it? It was called The Running Man.
But he didn't run. He didn't actually run much.
But he did
a bit, I guess.
In this one, it didn't look. I mean, Tom Arnold ran better, and he had some weird little shuffle run. Did you see his run after the lamppost takes all the shots?
Oh, I forgot that is one of the best scenes of the film.
I love that. I love how he checks his penis as well.
Just to be clear, is he like? Because going into this, I was in my head. I was like, because we're doing a new section later on, and it's like, one thing you could make a change about this film. And immediately in my head going into it, I was like, I'd probably be Tom Arnold. And then rewatching it, I'm like, no, Tom Arnold kind of fucking slays in this film.
Yeah, what's really funny?
I think he's really, really good.
What's really good in this? He's the straight man.
Yeah, in a way.
Like, he's not the comedian. He's the guy who's trying to keep the mission on track, trying to keep it all going.
But damn, is he funny?
Yeah, but he's still like, and one of the things again, like the whole tonal thing, is he actually feels like Schwarzenegger's friend. He's not just there to play second fiddle to him. Like he's constantly giving him shit. Like when he talks about, like she's like, oh, she's stealing money from me. He's like, yeah, she's probably stealing money to pay for her abortion. I was like, God damn, that's his 12-year-old daughter, dude.
Well, I mean, going to be fair, she's 14, dating what felt like a 25-year-old dude on that fucking motorbike outside.
Although and maybe it's just because I've watched the Barbie film, like she feels like a convincing teenager in the same way that the teenager in Barbie, and I don't think you've seen it. I like the Barbie movie, but I think the teenager is one of the worst written characters of all time. It's so clumsily done. Whereas in this, she actually feels like a teenager. Like she's doing bad things. She's stealing from her dad, but she's still playing the kind of like half good girl on the surface. It's like most teenagers just aren't shy bags all the time. I thought she was actually really good, but she doesn't get, admittedly, a lot of screen time. I just totally forgot it was Elijah Dushku.
Yeah, me too.
I totally forgot. But the one I really forgot was Charlton Heston. I absolutely forgot he was in this film as Spencer Trilby. What a fucking name.
As soon as I saw him, I just thought he looked like number one.
I immediately thought he looked like Spotswood from Team America. I thought he was going to be, now Gary, suck my cock. I thought it was going to be one of those deals. But he's actually one of my biggest issues in this film, because I was like, oh, it's so cool they got fucking Charlton Heston in this film. But he's kind of underutilized. He doesn't get many good lines.
He doesn't do anything. He doesn't actually give them a mission. He just keeps telling them how shit they are. Like every time you let them go. Oh, you mean you let them go again? Like he was there for a day, wasn't he?
Oh yeah.
He was, and it just feels a little bit. It's not just phoned in, like you said. I don't think he has many good lines. Like he looks the part. He's got the haircut. He's got the eyepiece. And like, oh, he's going to fucking slay. It's Charlton Heston, and it's just like, no, he just kind of exists. If you didn't know he was Charlton Heston, you wouldn't give it a second thought.
They just don't want him taking the limelight, do they? This is an Arnold Schwarzenegger film. Heston's there as a bit of a cameo, and it's just to add a bit of gravitas in every now and then. But
yeah, but if you're going to get Charlton Heston for a cameo, like what I immediately think of, and we keep bringing up, is Wayne's World. Like, you know how they brought him in to replace the old dude. Like he's the guy. Like if you're going to get a dude to come in and slay as a cameo, you get fucking Charlton Heston in, and they get him in, they get him looking the part, and then they just don't really give him anything to.
That's it. I don't reckon they got him looking the part. He didn't go through a wardrobe. I reckon he just came in. They went, oh, Heston's wearing an eye patch. All right, we'll go with it.
Maybe.
He just decided one day he's wearing an eye patch.
Got pink eye.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. But that is one of the issues with the film. I mean, when you look back at 90s films, and we talked about it a few episodes when we did Con Air, and certainly Terminator 2, if we're going to look back at another Cameron film, they look timeless because of the way where they're set, and the fact that it doesn't give so much away in terms of technology and certainly in terms of dress sense. By setting this in the city in terms of dealing with their home lives and having this set in Washington, D.C., it subsequently feels 90s as fuck. Don't get me wrong, the quality of the film suggests that it could have been a film shot yesterday about 1990, but make no mistake, this is a 90s fucking film. From the dodgy suits to the dodgy tech, you just can't escape it in this film. I mean, it's just one of those things you have to deal with. Like some films, like I said, you go back and you wouldn't know that they're 90s films. If you show this to someone today, they're going to have to get over that barrier of, oh, this is definitely a 90s film. Make no mistake.
Yeah, and you said, like, looking back at other films and comparing it, one reason you wanted to do this was to compare it against Demolition Man to a point.
Yeah.
Demolition Man is a good film. We all enjoyed it, but it felt, to me anyway, it felt like a closed set. They were very focused on where they were. They never gave anything away about anything else, you know. Whereas this, from the very first scene, felt like a big, wide, expansive. You know, they were going all over the place, doing different things, and it just felt like a much better shot film. And obviously, it's James Cameron. It's going to feel like that, isn't it? But it's just, you know, they're very different. But the thing that really came to me was I found Demolition Man not the best story, but really fun. Whereas I found this has a great story, but it's not a fun film to watch. Like, there was a big chunk in the middle where I found myself on my phone looking for facts for today and, you know, going to get a drink. And it just sort of died a bit in the middle.
It dragged.
Yeah.
I mean, when you learn about the terrorist, and then they seem to give the terrorist a 5-minute break, or a half-hour break, before he came back. It seemed to drag. They didn't go on with the story. And it lost me there as well. It's a fucking 2-hour and 21-minute film. It could easily feel like an hour and hour and a half.
That would be enough.
This is one of those things where I disagree with everyone again, because I actually thought I've got a big note here, that I think the film finds its feet when they abandon the terrorist storyline, which I don't think is as well served and I don't think is as interesting. And I think it finds its feet when they kind of zoom in, or whatever you want to call it, on the relationship between Jamie Lee Curtis and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I think that's the core of the film. And I think that's when it's most interesting. And I'm like, oh shit, that's the middle of the film. Whenever else
like
kind of zoned out.
Two different films that somehow got smushed together at the end. Which, don't get me wrong, that's for the better, because that last half an hour was absolutely magnificent. I'd forgotten just how action-packed and amazing fun that was.
Yeah.
I will get to that later, but I really, really enjoyed the end.
Do you know, so you mentioned the end. I got to mention one thing. The bridge, when they collapse the bridge, and you've got the 3 terrorists. Let's not mention the slapstick moment first, when that terrorist gets knocked out of the front of the window because the shockwave from the rocket launcher knocks him out. First, when they're all dangling over the edge, like Italian Job style, and then the pelican lands on it, and it falls like, 2 feet? And it blows up like it's a Simpsons episode. It was insane.
Yeah, it had to explode, though. It had to explode. But to bring it back to the middle of the movie briefly, like I said, I find it interesting that you guys all kind of lost interest, because I thought the relationship between Arnie and Jamie Lee Curtis was maybe the most interesting thing in the film, other than the ending, which we'll get to. And then you get all the stuff with is his name Simon in the film? Bill Paxton. All that stuff is fucking gold. Like, he is so slimy in this goddamn film, and he steals almost every scene he's in.
Because I love Bill Paxton, not in this.
I thought.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because but the problem that I had, and you're going to hate the new section about what would you change later when it comes to me.
Yeah.
The problem is that
if you say James Cameron, dude, I am going to lose my fucking mind.
No, I don't know, but I think it was. Yeah, you're right. It was because the Simon part was in the boring part, so I kind of lost interest in it. No, I did think he was quite good in it, but because it was in that whole part with the Jamie, I mean, you could do without Jamie Lee Curtis for half of this film and just bring her back to the end.
Yeah,
I think so. And I'm not trying to do this just to wind you up.
I know. We are on different pages, and as I said, it's quite interesting because I loved that middle section. I loved Bill Paxton's Simon, and I don't just love Bill Paxton's standard. We've criticized him on quite a few podcasts. Like, he feels like either like a love or hate. He's either like the best thing in a film or surprisingly a bit shit. But he has so many great lines when he's talking about all the women he sleeps with. He's like, "Oh, not just the skanks either." I'm like, "Oh my god, dude, you're the worst."
You never forget the vet gets them wet.
The vet gets them. Yeah. But the sequence.
What's that vet? For sale, $174.99.
No, that was 17.5 grand.
It was 17. So I missed the decimal.
Which is still pretty good.
I missed the decimal point. I didn't see what the decimal point was. I thought it was £174. Buy it now. I'm in for that.
No.
It's one of my favorite sequences is when he thinks that she's cheating on him with Simon, and they go back to his trailer, and they again this film, like the fact that they have the budget, they go all in, where they cut the part of the trailer off, and this whole sequence is just a masterclass of Schwarzenegger scowling. He just scowls for like 20 minutes. And one of these things this movie is really about is male insecurities. It's like everyone's shitting on women, but the moment he thinks, because he treats her like shit, like he's been lying to her for 15 years, but the moment he thinks she might be cheating on him, he goes to bits.
Yeah.
But so convincing. But the bit which really gets me is when he's got the balaclava on, they cut off the wall, and he's like laying on top of her, and it zooms on his face. He's got those big white eyes. He's just like, "Oh my god, Arnold Schwarzenegger's gonna fucking kill that guy." Like if you turned around and saw that face on 94 Schwarzenegger in a balaclava, you're like, "Oh, I might wet myself as well."
Also, it goes to the point where even if he's wearing a balaclava, you don't know that's your husband. He's coming.
Yeah, how can you not know it? Yeah, that is maybe the biggest
impression. That was my Tim Taylor impression.
Come on. But the thing, the middle of the film, I think, is very much the heart of the movie, and I think there's some great sequences. I mean, I'm not sure if you class it as the end of the film, but I think the truth serum sequence is maybe. Yeah. I know you guys don't like the gun down the stairs, but the build up to that is fantastic.
That is
the back and forth.
Like when he tells the truth and he says, "What I'm going to use you as a human shield."
Pick that the guy.
Yeah. So
there's so many great. It's like, and when if you killed anyone, it's like but they're all the bad guys.
He puts the meat hook in that guy's chest and then just drags him along the floor.
Well, that is the thing again. It's like when people die in this film, it's quite nasty. They don't shy away from the action. When the action comes in, it really does come in. And I know we've hardly mentioned the kind of the chase earlier in the film, and it is decent. But make no mistake, it's the end of this film, which I think unequivocally is just the best part of it. And it does have that James Cameron kind of big dick move of having two endings. Like he did it in Aliens, where you have the big fight with the alien queen at the end of the film, and you think, well, it's done. You've escaped and everything. And then all of a sudden you have the second part of the fight with the queen alien, where you already think the film's finished. And in this, it's almost like you have the bridge sequence, which is like the fact that it was made in 94 is almost unbelievable how they achieved it. And just, they have the big kiss with the nuclear bomb going off in the background. In any other film, that's the end. But then you're like, wait a minute, what happened to Aziz? Oh yeah, well, there's going to be another even bigger action set piece right after this. It's unbelievable.
Can we mention that? Like the nuclear bomb went off. They actually did. Like I was surprised watching this again that they didn't stop the nuclear bomb. Usually in these kind of films, you get down to 1 second and stuff. But the nuclear bomb went off. But they were fine because they were on the other side of the bridge, which is fine. 12 miles. But what about the rest of the people in the Florida Keys? They didn't mention that like millions of people are now burning.
Oh, no, not so much that.
No, it's out at sea, I think they were suggesting.
It was on an uninhabited island. But I would suggest that the nuclear fallout has now decimated Florida.
Yeah.
And
there is that, yeah. I mean, there is that one line, like when they're in the helicopter initially, like you've got Tom Arnold telling them like they've got to evacuate the area and get people out. Like that's their kind of token gesture, say, "Oh, don't worry about it, everyone's going to be fine." But in reality, a lot of people are going to get very sick about 3 years after this film finishes. Basically,
I mean, you said about how did they make it look so good in 1994? I think that's why it looked so good. because there's so much practical effects going on.
Absolutely, absolutely.
They haven't got to the point where they've got the dodgy CGI, which makes everything look terrible. Yeah. So, it's limited. There is obviously computer-generated stuff in there, but
it's very limited.
They blew up part of a bridge,
Yeah, and
that was an actual disused piece of bridge, which they rebuilt parts of it because they were already taking it down, and then they blew it up.
And one of the reasons I mentioned in the intro that at the time this was the most expensive movie ever made, and one of the reasons is because they rented 4 of those fighter jets. Those aren't CG fighter jets; those are actual fighter jets. Obviously, some of them are models. A lot of the best special effects going back to like Jurassic Park is that combination of kind of, well, this is a set, this is a painting, this is CG. It's like using it to the best of its ability rather than, a lot of modern cinema just being wholly reliant upon CG. And I think it's one of the problems with modern cinema is that people have become a little bit numb to CG because you can still tell when it is CG and when it's not. And, it's the reason that Top Gun was the biggest film last year. It's the reason that Oppenheimer is going to be one of the biggest films this year is because they're selling on, we did this shit. It's not CG. It's not on a computer. And it's one of the reasons that the end of this film looks fucking amazing.
Do you know why they got 4 planes? Because they needed to cut 2 in half and put back together so fucking Arnie could fit in one comfortably. Really? No, I'm making that shit. But it just fucking looked like, didn't it? Like, how are you squeezing that dude in a fighter jet?
I can't believe
I know. I was like, really? You believe that? But he looks the part in it, though, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, man. Like, the bridge sequence is fantastic. I mean, the bit when Jamie Lee Curtis is hanging out of the plane, she actually did that. Like, she was like, I don't want to stunt double. I actually want to be doing this. And that, I remember, like, when I was watching the film, I was like, how the hell did they do that shot? That really looks like Jamie Lee Curtis is there. It's like, yes, she was. And the bridge looks great because they blew up a bridge.
I felt really bad for Tia Carrera. Like, she went off in such a terrible way.
Do you think her character just kind of, like, don't get me wrong, I know you love
her. Her character was totally pointless.
Every time she is. It annoyed me. Which, again, annoyed me more because, like you, I love Tia Carrera. Yeah. I think she's brilliant. But,
but it doesn't feel like she's needed, really, does it?
Do you know, one thing I want to bring up, right? What was the most... this film is totally unbelievable in regard to a lot. But what's the most unbelievable part about this film, do you reckon?
The 100 rounds that Aziz shot in the bathroom without
100%. Yeah, I actually said it out loud. I was like, "Is this like an unlimited? Is this a magic gun? What's happening here?"
I was going to go with the fact that no matter where you are, as soon as you want a parking space, there one is. Like it happened about 5 or 6 times. Drive around here, drive. Oh, he's pulled over. Right, parking space. Like every time they.
But it is America though. It's weird. Like outside of like your coastal cities, because I know it is Washington DC, but I remember we went to Albany, New York, and Albany is the capital of New York State, and it's got some amazing architecture. And when we pulled in, like the first place I saw a parking spot, I was like, "I'll park here because I can see one, and then we can walk into town." We walked into town. There were parking spaces everywhere. I was like, I could have parked outside City Hall in a tank. It's just a bizarre thing of American cities, as I said, other than your New Yorks, your San Franciscos, Bostons and stuff, where the city centers are in the day ghost towns. Unless you go to like a certain part of it where it's like, it was the same when we went to Buffalo. There were people down by the water, but in the city center, I was like, where the fuck are all the people? It feels like you're in a zombie movie. Because we're just used to, the city center is where everyone goes. And I think it's because they don't have traditional high streets. So it's not like, you go there and you do the shopping and stuff. Up? What? Buffalo and...
Buffalo? No, well, buffalo wings.
Yeah, well, buffalo wings because they come from buffalo. They're not made of buffalo. They're chicken wings, dude.
They're not buffalo's wings? What?
I know.
Those little things.
The famous buffalo wing. Albany, New York. Albany, New York. It's the capital of New York State. New York isn't the capital of New York. Albany is. Anyway, doesn't matter. But my point being is that it's surprisingly easy to park in a lot of these cities, just because they have massive boulevards and shit.
Yeah, I still think it's... I mean, but you expect it from 90s films. I mean, the Magic Fire in Uzi had about 200 rounds in it.
It did.
It upsets me too much.
You hate that scene, don't you?
I really hate that.
It's awful.
I mean, guns do not fire unless someone's got their finger on the trigger. So why would it keep firing? Because it's bouncing.
And I appreciate it might do it once as it lands because but I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt.
That's a lateral
every time.
Oh, it's just stupid. Anyway, we're on the island now. Everything's kicking off. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I couldn't understand why they bothered was why did they bury the nuclear bomb and then pour wet, sloppy-ass concrete all over it, knowing this thing was going off in 90 minutes. I mean, if you could have found that 30 seconds before the bomb was going to go off and still just lifted it out, because that would still be soup.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I'm sure, like,
I
playing
the
on
benefit that was quick drying concrete.
Really
very quick, yeah.
Very, very quick drying
Also,
concrete,
the whole nuclear bomb thing, it's a single point of failure, isn't it? It's just one key for all of these units. So
yeah, it seems a little bit silly.
That's Russians for you, though, isn't it?
They just don't give a fuck. Well, so that kind of leads us to like the second part of the finale, as it were. Did that all work for you? Like the whole saving his daughter, the stuff with Aziz, and obviously, you know, him shooting on the rocket through the building into the other helicopter. I mean, I don't think it's as good as the bridge sequence, but looking back, I was still amazed at how good it looked for 1994. Like the stuff when his daughter is hanging from the crane and he's there with the fighter jet below it. I'm just like, this looks amazing. There's none of this kind of like, oh, that looks good for 94. I'm just like, no, that just looks fucking good.
I'm not sure if it was just because the whiskey had kicked in at this point, but by the time they'd broken out of their little capture situation and they were on the road and everything was perfect.
Oh,
I absolutely love this movie from that point on.
I love it like all the way through. It's like a 2-star film, but he's so pissed. But is this the greatest film I've ever seen? I mean, I'm very upset about the wet cement. By the end of it. Very upset about the wet cement. But other than that, it's all fucking gold.
By the end of it, he stood up in his living room on his own, just applauding, just clapping. Joe, were you there? It was weird, right? Because I had this moment when we watched Rambo 3. I'd never seen Rambo 3 before. I thought I'd seen it because it turns out I watched Hot Shots Part 2. Now, I have seen True Lies before, but I swear, like, I forgot that the whole him hitting his testicles on the tail of a plane happened, but it's in Hot Shots.
I got it written here.
Yeah.
It is from Hot Shots.
Yeah, Ryan does it. Whatever his name is, Ryan.
Is that bit? That was one of the few bits in the film where I was like, is it a bit too broad, the comedy? Because like in that part of the film, especially with the ending, I think I was in full action movie mode. Like almost the comedy's been pushed to the side towards the end. Like all this stuff on the bridge. It's like it's still kind of lighthearted, but it's like it's a proper action movie. The budget, all the money at that point is up on screen. Like this is unbelievable. It's Cameron working to his best, and then you have the stuff with Aziz, who's like a proper bad guy, and then suddenly they have the dick joke where he hurts his.
But you have the comedy moment just before as well. About him not being able to fly the plane because it's been 10 years since he's flown. So he takes out the top of a police car and everything.
That's okay, though.
No, but that's what I mean. So you had that little bit, which is fine. But now he's got the hang of it. He's flying the plane like a fucking ace.
Yeah,
and then Aziz kind of like, all I was doing at that point was expecting to spit his nuts out and go, you win.
I mean, the thing is, you joke. It's not a million miles away from that.
No.
And that was... it was same as old pissed Dave sitting on the sofa. Towards the end of the film, I'm like, God damn, the end of this film is absolute money from like, it's just the non-stop. And then as soon as he hit his crotch, I was like, oh, really? I can't remember. I must have blocked that out because the bit after it where he falls onto the rocket and he shoots it out, it's silly, but it still feels like an action movie. It's impressive. It looks
like that rocket made with him hanging on it as well as ballast. Would it have made it through?
Probably not.
No.
You pulled the nose down. Yeah. You'd probably blown apart the building instead.
And fuck me, the strap of his bag is strong as fuck.
Oh, I think that would keep you up. I mean, I think maybe I can buy the strap of the bag holding him up, but I think, yeah, like you said, the weight on, especially like if he was in the middle of the missile, maybe you could buy it, but on the front, surely it's dragging it down. Maybe Harry is so talented that he's taking that into consideration.
Why is the helicopter on the other side? Like they knew where he was, and they're trying to shoot him. So why?
Oh no, they're there for a reason. Because just before that, he's trying to shoot them, and the helicopter goes around the corner, and he clips the edge of the building. It looks really cool. You can see the bullets in the water, and then the helicopter just disappears around the other side of the building, and he takes off a chunk of the building. So I think that's why it's around there. So I think that just about makes sense. But as I said, I'm willing to let all that go. I just don't like the hitting the nuts sequence rough. But other than that, absolutely fantastic.
It's the classic horror movie thing as well, isn't it? Where you run upstairs. Where was Eliza Dushku going?
Yeah.
Like, she got to the top of the roof and thought, I can't really go. I know, I'll go higher. Like, where the fuck are you going, love?
She's just buying time.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have.
She doesn't know.
She's 12.
Yeah. Well,
No.
she doesn't know her salesman dad's coming in a fucking fighter plane. Just chuck it off the building, the key. He's either going to shoot you or not.
Wow.
You want to keep the leverage when you're up there. Like when she's up there, I think she does everything right. I think she puts it around, and I can appreciate what she does when she's on the crane. Her getting to the crane was admittedly dumb. I know for the movie she kind of has to go upstairs, because if she goes downstairs and he's in a plane, you're like, well, this hasn't worked at all. But, it basically turns into the raid instead, with Arnie going up. But yeah, she should have gone downstairs, but we'll just put it down to youthful panic, shall we say?
Was it just me, or when Arnie finally arrives and he says the words, "Daddy will catch you"? Does it sound like a threat more than someone trying to help?
It was it.
It does. Come on, Daddy will catch you. Come on. Well, that's one of the things I mentioned when I was watching with my wife, was like every line in this movie sounds like a nod to his previous movies.
Yeah,
but it's because Arnie always just sounds like Arnie. But he's like, get to the plane, get to the car, come on. He's got he says like 8 lines over and over again and just applies it across all of his movies.
Yeah, you get the feeling he needs that, though.
As much as I love Arnie, he has limited range.
Yeah, and not to go all the way back to the beginning, but the thing I love about having him and Tom Arnold there is Tom Arnold can deliver a line with absolute perfect comedic timing. I mean, he is great at delivering dialogue and stuff like that. Whereas there's a scene where Arnie's talking to his wife whilst looking at the mirror, and it looks like someone stuck the script to the mirror, and he just has to read it line by line, because that's what he knows. And he's got no level of like emotion in him at all.
You went Indian then.
Oh, did I?
Come on, you got to do it. Come on, It's like, no, and I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago when we did the Rambo 3 podcast, or certainly last week when we did the Demolition Man podcast, for that matter, is that Arnie doesn't belong in the same conversation as Stallone. And I know we have different feelings about it, but Stone, I think, on his day, is a genuinely good actor. As much as I love Schwarzenegger, and he might well be my favorite movie star of all time. Like, I grew up and I watched all his films, and I still love them all to this day. He's not a great actor, but what he does have is screen presence and charisma. And it's one of those things you cannot buy. Like, you can be the best actor in the world, but if we put you on a 60-foot screen, you just don't hold the screen. Arnie, as dodgy as his acting can be, you put him up there and it's just like, that is a fucking movie star every time.
Confused. I was going to use this as a bit of an argument, and then I checked it and I would have been completely wrong. I was going to say, like, he gets better as time goes on. So later movies, he can deliver better dialogue and stuff. And I was going to say, to a point, but I was going to say, like, he delivers much better lines in things like Twins. Twins was like 6 years before this.
Yeah.
So it's almost like he's regressed slightly when he's doing it.
I think it's when he's being asked to act like a natural human being. That's when he has the problem. Like when he's being asked to be a movie star, like in Twins, it's a very comedic role and he actually pulls off, but he's larger than life. And you've got to remember, his character hasn't had any interaction with the rest of the human world his whole life. So his kind of awkwardness feels natural, bizarrely, in the film. Yeah. And in Predator, it's him with a bunch of buff guys. So all his lines feel like they work in that universe. And obviously the Terminator speaks for itself. In this, the biggest issue is when he has to just be dad. And it's just like, oh, you have to buy him as a human. You're like, I don't know. I don't think I buy him as a human at all.
If you're buying him as a dad, then he's got a maid somewhere with another kid. Like, I'm sorry, but that's just how it is. I want to mention two things, right? And it's one for what Liam said and one for what you said, Dave. The first one is, Liam, I call bullshit on you saying that you like everything Arnold did, because go back and watch
not everything.
Deal. You said
films. No, I loved a lot of his films. I did say loved all of his films. That was wrong. I never liked Raw Deal. Even when I was younger, I knew Raw Deal was shit. Raw Deal is shit. It is shit, and it raises shit. He's made some bad films, but a lot of it's great.
And you said Tom Arnold's lines. And one of the best deliveries is when Schwarzenegger comes out finding his missus is cheating on him, moping, and he goes, "Oh, she's having an affair," and he goes, "Mazel tov, welcome to the club."
Well, so much of that was from personal experience. The line he says, "Oh, she even took the ice out of the fridge." That supposedly Roseanne Barr, who is having a divorce, actually did that, which is, no pun intended, but cold as fuck. If
you had told me in the 90s that in 2023 Roseanne would be better looking than Madonna.
Yeah, I saw that. It's weird.
Have you seen that?
No, like
Yeah.
I've seen them.
It took me wrong. It's a very kind picture of Roseanne.
No.
Yeah,
And
it is. No, you're right. It is a very kind picture of Roseanne.
I mean, actually, the picture I saw was a different one. Like Roseanne Barr, like the thing is, she looks her age. And I think that's a big part of it. It's like, oh, well, the issues you might have had when she was younger, like, oh, well, she's carrying a bit of timber. It's like she's in her 60s. She's quite dolled up. She's put together. Whereas Madonna's made the mistake of trying to look like a 20-year-old, so she ends up looking like a 60-year-old lizard instead. It just doesn't work. I know it's unfair on women. I know there's a lot of issues, and I don't want to get into that conversation, but it's a fucking train wreck, sadly, for Madonna. It just is.
Madonna's starting to look like the thing that fought Captain Kirk on that desert planet.
The thing is, it's not just unique to women, it's dudes as well. I mean, what's his name from the Expendables? He's been in other films, the wrestler, or that
Mickey Rourke. Oh my god. That picture I shared the other week, did you remember that? Oh.
Yeah, he looks like a pretend person. And it's weird how some people, and this is now turning the plastic surgery podcast, some people take to it and some don't. I always use I guarantee every woman is chasing the Cher. Cher is the perfect example of how plastic surgery can go right. She looks unbelievable for her age. But then the other end of the spectrum, if it doesn't take, Bill Burr famously said, there's no jacket for your face. And it's like, that's the problem. If you go changing something like that and it doesn't work, it's fucking horrifying. But never mind. Moving on from...
anyone else got anything they want to mention before we move on?
No, let's just move on. Should we go into favourite scenes?
Do you want anything else, Steve? Or... No? Yeah, go for it, Jim.
I mean, because of the impact it had on me in a young age, I want to say the striptease scene because, that gave me an actual thing for the classic little black dress and stuff like that. But now you've said about the fact that her body is smoking hot, but that she's got the face of a mum, I'm kind of like, you're kind of right. So that might have been slightly ruined. I could say the arrest in Bill Paxton, is amazing. But the truth is, it's the bridge sequence. It's the best part of the film. It's when it goes pure action. It feels like a traditional Cameron film, and it's the best part of the film.
Yeah, for me, it was the bridge sequence.
3.
Yeah, I mean,
it's the correct answer.
Anything else?
I mean, there's a close second. I do like it when the Harrier just rises up and then just decimates an entire floor of a building. With again. More bullets than a Harrier can carry, but it's fucking brilliant to watch.
My close second was the Uzi coming down the stage.
I tell you what, right? If you had asked back in the day, and I think when most people think of this film, do you know what they remember is the sequence where Arnie's on the horse and Aziz is on the bike. But the problem watching it nowadays in 4K or HD or whatever is exactly what we said earlier. It's the fact that I keep getting taken out of the sequence by all the body double work. It's so clearly not Arnie for too much of the sequence, and that is genuinely a problem with that part of the film. Now,
I didn't enjoy that very much. I mean, it's quite funny when he's saying, "Get back up here quickly, my horse is getting tired."
Yeah, why is the horse getting tired? Because it's got a massive man on top of it,
moving that quickly. Yeah. Then he's just like, "Oh, now they're just in a lift together."
That took
there's a woman unhappy.
That took longer than it should have as well. That was oh my god, that was painful. Just watching them in that lift.
It kind of reminded me of Commando, but it didn't have the awesome steel drum music. Like that sequence in Commando is also slow and terrible, but all you hear is bum, 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 and you're like, all right, this is still kind of awesome. But I bet you a lot of money went into that sequence because it's clearly shot in location in Washington. And there's so many people on the street that it doesn't feel like a set. It doesn't feel like a movie set or anything. It's like, well, that feels like a dude riding a horse around on the street. It's just you are taken away from it by the body doubles. So never mind. So all agreed, it's the bridge. Loves and hates. Love, 1, Jamie Lee Curtis. I still think she's fantastic in this film. Number 2, the perfect tone of action and comedy. I think they get the balance bang on. The bridge sequence and practical effects. And I'm going to sneak in a 4th, the fact that he went for that ballsy double ending, which I don't think happens very often, and I don't think anybody pulls it off better than James Cameron.
Great. Lads, the first one, Tom Arnold. I just think he brings the right level of comedy and as a weirdness as a straight man, which I hadn't really thought of, but he does. He's fantastic. Love Bill Paxton. I think he plays a slime ball just to a T. I mean, he's fantastic.
Fuck, I'm already thinking. I'm just hearing. I'm like, his list is much better than mine. Much better.
and then the last love is the Harrier jump jet as a big plane geek. To have a British designed plane in an American film is quite a big statement anyway. But they use it to perfection. He's literally the only vehicle in the world at the time who could do that.
Can I just kind of like remove my list and just replace it with Dave's? Oh, so I'm like, yeah, like because Tom Arnold, I like you said, I went into it thinking, oh, Tom Arnold wasn't great in this film. I'm watching, I'm like, Tom Arnold slays, Bill Paxton's fantastic, and the planes absolutely steal the show. So yeah, let's go with those instead.
Bill Paxton, sorry, Tom Arnold was on mine because I said he was the straight man. I think he did really well. His weird running, shuffling was good, and the way he hid behind that lamppost and everything like that. I think he was really good in it, and just being the guy that's trying to be the foil to Arnold Schwarzenegger. I was going to say Tom Arnold Schwarzenegger to Arnold Schwarzenegger I think he's really good in it.
Yeah, but what he is, sorry, and just because it's popped into my head before I forget, I think in most films, what you end up with is Benji in Mission Impossible, because he's the kind of equivalent character in, like, a comparable action movie.
For those fucking awful films.
No. I just think in those films, like, what you usually get is a Benji character who's so kind of like, he's so in love with the lead character, and he's so eager to please him and impress him and stuff. That's, I think that's what you get in most action films. But like I said, Tom Arnold in this film, like, he gives Arnold so much shit.
Yeah.
Like I said, that's why they feel like friends rather than he's just a guy I work with. But sorry to butt in there.
That's right. Tia Carrera, just for the fact that it made me love Tia Carrera again.
I know that's how much he loves Tia Carrera.
I love it.
We were like, she's pointless in the film. There's no need to be in it. She's one of my favorite things in the film because she's that fucking hot.
I love it. She is smoking.
Yeah.
And I did like the whole plane sequence at the end. The plane sequence I thought was really good. Like you said, when it mowed down an entire floor without just. I thought it was really good up until, like I said, it was used as a comedic element to take somebody's nuts out. But other than that, I thought it was really good. Sorry, I'm just going to go straight into my hates because
go for it.
I said Tia Carrera on loves, but also Tia Carrera is on my hates because, and this is what I want, because I love the fact it brought Tia Carrera back into my life, but also the fact she's fucking pointless in this film. There's no point in Tia Carrera, and
she is a very, very pretty plot device.
Yeah,
but she is a plot device.
And it brought her into a question I had. The whole plot device. They took these. Apparently, they took these things out of Persia, out of the ground or wherever it was. But how did they get the
nukes inside?
The nukes inside. And why did they?
It doesn't make sense. It was kind of like the ship in the bottle. I'm like, somebody's got to show me the YouTube video because I have no idea how that fucking got there. Yeah. And also, they go out their way to say that they're priceless artifacts.
Yeah.
I'm like, why would you do that? Like, you don't have to destroy just put them in something, I don't know, not priceless.
Yeah.
Or not previously sealed. Yeah. It's kind of silly.
The bad guy's hairdo. I can't get away from it. It's definitely like it was just he's
ruined your day.
Yeah, I was really upset that he's meant to be intimidated. All right, this guy is firing, as you say, a magic gun. But you look at this dude and you just think up to the point where he walks in, he slaps Tia Carrera in the face, and you just look at him and you think, mate, you're just fucking laughable. I
really? I thought he was good.
I couldn't stop laughing at his hair. And I'm gonna. It's like a slash. This one, the Crimson Jihad / the limo driver.
No, I think that is a very important slash because I feel like there was the terrorist group and then there was just the fucking limo driver. I was like, I don't know what he was doing. He just seemed to be hanging around. Everyone else looked like they were straight out of central casting for Middle Eastern terrorists. And then you had this fucking dude. I was all right, fair enough. Also, it felt like there's a version of this film where he played a bigger role.
Don't mess with the Zohan.
Well, yeah, and the other half looked like they were just out of Arnie's gym and they just put a spray tan on him. Maybe. Because how many fucking muscle-bound jihads was there? They were massive.
Well, there was one in particular, wasn't it? The guy from the bathroom sequence was ginormous.
Yeah, but there was the other guy then who had the tash. That's how he differentiated the two massive jihads.
Yeah, but we know who stole the show, though.
Yeah,
it was the camera guy. That sequence is so good when he's giving his like fire and brimstone speech, and you can see how nervous he is. Like, oh, no. And he's Batar Aziz. Like, to this day, we still say Batar Aziz because of this film. Ridiculous.
Who wants to go next?
Dave, go for it, bud.
Okay, so first hate is a more general, the baddies. So Tia Carrera and Art Malik. I think, like you said, she's lovely. She just didn't need to be in this film.
No.
Every time she came on screen, she just annoyed me. So there was no point in her being there. And Art Malik, I think he played it too straight. He was too angry. I think, the film isn't that straight. And I think it was just a bit of a mismatch. I think he could have, I don't know. But then I'd have probably moaned that he was too slapstick the other way. So maybe
You just don't like his hair either.
know?
He's getting both barrels, bless him.
Second hate was Arnie's stunt doubles. I mean, the amount of dodgy shots that came out of that, it was unforgivable for me. And surprise, surprise, it's that self-shooting gun. I mean, that thing just really pissed on my chips. I don't know what it was. Yeah. It really annoyed me.
In fairness, as I was writing down my defense, and as I kind of presented it on this podcast, I was thinking, it's like, am I trying to defend this more than I actually want to defend this? I think I'm amazed that the film even like remotely gets away with it, because that sequence is ridiculous, and I think it speaks to the quality of the rest of the film. And as I mentioned, like the fact that it encapsulates both tones so perfectly and allows them both to exist in the same film. I think that's won me over more than the actual scene itself, because it is a bit silly. Never mind. In terms of hates, I've got a pretty aggressive misogyny in this film. There's no escaping it. It can get a little bit aggressive at times. Some pretty clumsy and cliche-ridden views of the Middle East. Again, this is all pre 9/11, so it's just that's what cinema was like. And completely agree with Dave. A few too many shots of Arnie's stunt double. I think it really is the downside of an otherwise fantastic 4K conversion. It just, you can accept it once or twice, but I feel like there's at least 15 or 16 examples, clear examples in this film where you're like, well, that's a stunt double. It's just not Arnie, and it just doesn't look right. Yeah. Those are my hates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's next?
Alternative title, sir.
We do have a couple. Like, mostly it was all True Lies, pretty much, but we had a few that stood out. So Canada was Real Lies. The French-Canadian title, that is. Okay. So,
so maybe it's, yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah. France was True Lies, The Chameleon.
Why?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's strange.
Are they saying Arnie's a chameleon? He can fit into a gazebo? He fucking couldn't.
No.
Spain was Risky Lies.
It's a bit better. It's as bad as it is. It's the second best one after the actual title of this film.
Taiwan was Devil King True Lies.
Why are they?
No.
What True Lies? Why are they adding extra words?
Well, that's what they always do. So let's hyphenate the fuck out of this and add something ludicrous. But that one's silly as well.
Ukraine was A True Lie. Just one.
Well, it kind of is. It is one big lie. I'm not telling you I'm a spy. So that's not too bad.
Google Translate coming out on top as being, again, one of the most racist conversions I've ever seen. Japan, True Rise.
It's not True Rise.
It's True Rise. If you take it and you put it into Google Translate, it comes out as True Rise. R-I-S.
You know, if you do the audio, does it? Oh, True Rise. Does it the full works?
I don't know. It sounds like something out of Team America, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Google KKK.
I don't know.
Weird going on.
It hates.
I think instead of like Google.com, he hasn't realized that he saved like Google/cracker.co.uk or something like that. I don't know, man. That is pretty fucking racist.
Yeah.
But also, I kind of hope it's true, because it's the fun racism, isn't it? It's not mean-spirited. It's just a bit silly.
It's the best kind of racism.
It's the best kind of, like, most racism's terrible, but every so often you get a True Rise on Google/cracker.com and everybody laughs.
Google/cracker.kkk.
Yeah, what's going on? God's sake, Dave, can you rein this podcast in with some decent facts?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I think you've said most of them to this, but
sorry.
I'll have a quick rattle through.
Go for it.
Tom Arnold actually lost his ice cube trays, as you said, to Roseanne when she left him. He was talking to James Cameron, and his actual words were, "What kind of sick bitch takes the ice cube trays from your freezer?"
I mean, he's not wrong. He's not wrong.
He found that so funny that he actually wrote that into the script. Next one, Arnie's horse got startled during one of the scenes. He managed to sort of slide off the horse, but he nearly fell down a 30-foot drop as a result of it. But luckily, his stunt guy saw what was happening and managed to catch him and stop him going down. So
Schwarzenegger almost died.
So he almost died, yeah. Could have been really bad.
Well, it would have been a lot more famous than it is at the moment if Schwarzenegger had died.
This is true. Fairness. James Cameron had to fight pretty hard to get Tom Arnold in the movie. So The execs didn't like him. Apparently, he had quite a bad reputation, all the stuff with Roseanne and that. So Cameron actually threatened to take the film to a different company, and they said, "Okay, we'll back down."
Cameron always guess what he wants. Cameron,
and I think it's all better for it.
Yeah, totally.
The Harrier jump jets cost $100,000 on loan from the U.S. Marines.
That's 1994 money as well.
They figured that out an hour. How much an hour? Oh, it was like $2,500. That's $2,410. Like for an hour. That's good work.
So this is what I liked. There's the scene where the helicopters following the car, and they say, "Yeah, she's got her head in his lap." Yeehaw!
Oh yeah.
That's actually Jim Cameron's voice.
So is it really?
Yeah.
That's a great sequence. Oh yeah, she's got her head in her lap. All right. Yeehaw! Of all the things to say.
So this film was actually pitched to Cameron by Arnie and his brother-in-law after seeing the French film Jackpot.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another one you've said. A pretty dark one, actually. Eliza Dushku was actually molested on set by one of the stunt coordinators, Joel Kramer. And that's not something I've ever heard of.
No, I don't know if we should say alleged, because it was never proven. But
no, I'm going to say did.
Yeah. No, in that we should say alleged.
Yeah. So because
Rob's like, no, let's go with solid fact. She was definitely molested.
No, Dave said that. I'm not saying that. I've got alleged. No, so basically, yeah, you're right. She said that she was assaulted. Nobody believed her or something, and because she said that before she did a scene, it turns out then that she then had a scene that was run by the stunt coordinator, and she walked away with like 2 broken ribs and something like that. So she thinks it was done on purpose. Yeah. Like, yeah.
Do you have any fun facts after that horror show?
Well, it was the first film ever to have £100 million budget.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, there we go. Let's call it with that one. Saved it.
And that's pretty much the end of my facts.
I got a couple if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't supposed to drop the tape recorder, but again, I've said it a couple of times, being as lecherous as he is, I'm guessing he saw porn star body down and then mum face up, and just, I don't know, I guess, yeah, it's shocking.
I still think you're being very harsh on Jamie Lee Curtis. She was like, I know I said that it comes as a surprise in this film, but she was something of a sex symbol in the 80s. After, like I said, especially with
It's called Wanda and stuff, and
well, no, before that, it was like basically when she took her top off in Trading Places, because she played the prostitute in that film.
I preferred her in Trading Places. I thought she was awesome in that.
Yeah, she's fantastic. I mean, that was like, 12 years earlier than this, I suppose. But she's only like 34 or 35, I think, when they filmed this. But I know what you mean. She had something of a mumsy face. There's no escaping that. But goddamn, that body.
When asked during an interview with whether his wife was bothered by him sitting there watching Jamie Lee Curtis strip, Arnold Schwarzenegger said that she asked him about it, and he assured her, "Honey, I hated every hour of it." Yeah, okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's why you dropped the tape recorder. Arnold Schwarzenegger said that this was the film he was meant for. Harry's horse was played by 4 different horses because they each had a different skill and a broken back. And basically, every one of the actors said this has been their favourite films. Tia Carrera said it was her favourite film because she got to play a bad guy.
And because she got paid for 7 months, and she was only supposed to be there for 7 weeks.
Fucking hell.
Apparently, the film ran on so much that they have to keep bringing people back.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things with James Cameron, especially with his movies in the 80s and 90s. He was a famous taskmaster, and the shoot for this went on and on and on and on. Yeah. But he's a perfectionist, but it shows on the screen.
And I'm only going to go with one more, because I didn't actually, until I read this, I didn't actually see this, but it's true. Tom Arnold said that he and Harry are the only ones totally honest with each other in that movie. If you think about it, it's true. Did he only to tell the truth? Everyone, like, what was it? Eliza Dushku's lying, she's stolen money. Yeah. Everyone else is lying to somebody or doing something. So yeah,
maybe they should have got together. Maybe the secret romance of the film is Tom Arnold and Arnold Schwarzenegger. My God, that would be horrifying.
I hate to see that.
Yeah. In terms of legacy, we already mentioned a few times. This is a remake. The French original 1991's La Totale by Claude Zidi has a lot of similarities, actually. I don't think it's one of those, they've taken the concept and taken it in a completely different direction. There are obvious changes, but I think fundamentally pretty similar films. There was a TV show that was actually produced by James Cameron with Ginger Gonzalez and Steve Howe in the lead roles. It did not do well commercially or critically, and has already been cancelled after one season. That literally came out, was it last year or this year, I think. I mentioned earlier, feels very influential, with Mr. and Mrs. Smith, MI3, John Wick, and all that jazz. Big commercial and critic hit, but also Cameron's forgotten movie in many respects. We referred to that earlier. I would argue one of Arnie's more underrated movies for that reason. Like you said, he thinks he was made for this film. I think there are a few moments when, like I said, he's trying to act like a dad and suddenly his acting capabilities hit something of a glass ceiling. But for the most part, I think he's really good in this film. And it was actually up for one Oscar for visual effects, but lost out to Forrest Gump, the movie that it bumped off first place in the US box office. But then a week later, Forrest Gump knocked it back off. I think for a lot of people, that might sound strange because if you go back and look at Forrest Gump, you're like, why did that win for special effects? But people forget how, what an impact it was, the sequence in Washington, D.C., where they add the crowd in digitally to look like the 60s. Yeah. It's like now you wouldn't give it a second thought, but back in 1994, that was a massive deal. Well, it was kind of like natural special effects.
It was putting Forrest Gump up against all the presidents as well, wasn't it? I mean, he shook hands with I don't know, presidents. I don't know if I can...
Yeah, but that was the thing. I think up until that point, when people thought of special effects, they thought of you go to space or you do something amazing. Forrest Gump was one of the first movies that used special effects to just make it look more real, I suppose.
Yeah, I totally agree. Sorry about that. We had a little bit of a technical issue, but I think we pretty much finished Legacy. So do you want to move on to the next section, mate?
Yeah, so the new section that we're bringing in this week is going to make a change. Yes, that is a reference to Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror song. But basically what we're going to do is look back, and if you could make one change to any movie that we've watched. Like, the reason I basically thought of this, because last week when we did Demolition Man, I brought it up during the podcast, like, if only you could change the director, if only, well, to bring it to this podcast, if James Cameron, for instance, directed... oh, here we go. So you're only allowed to make one change, remember, to make this film better. So going into it, I thought it was probably going to be Tom Arnold. And I actually thought, what happens if you replace Tom Arnold with, Danny DeVito and made it like the unofficial third party of the Schwarzenegger Danny DeVito trilogy? But now I've rewatched the film, like, you can't replace Tom Arnold. He's too fucking awesome. And then I was like, maybe you could replace Art Malik. And I was thinking maybe Oded Fehr from The Mummy. But he was probably too young and I'd argue too dreamy. Although it would solve the problem of the hair, because Oded Fehr, as I'm sure you remember from The Mummy, had absolutely fantastic fucking hair.
I don't think he was too young, because Oded Fehr was in The Mummy the year after. No, he wasn't.
No, The Mummy was 99.
Yeah, I was thinking of something else. Checked.
No, he would have been like 22. It wouldn't have worked. Yeah. So basically, the boring answer is I would tone down the misogyny. I know that's not the most interesting answer, but if I was going to change one thing for this film, especially in the first half of the film, it occasionally feels a little bit nasty. And as I said, it feels like everyone's going through a divorce. So I'm not sure how much influence Tom Arnold had on the script for this film, but it feels like a fucking lot. So yes, take that, rein that in a little bit. So that's
for me. Mine would be a script change. The one thing I would change is what feels like Liam's favorite part of the movie. The whole wife, husband.
Just the script. Change the script.
No. The whole...
Fuck it off.
So basically, from the moment they meet the terrorist and they have that bathroom scene, and then the terrorist doesn't come back until they're in the bedroom and he kidnaps them, that whole in-between, just it ruined it for me. And I like the fact that, I do agree with you. Like, Bill Paxton was good, but I don't think I liked him in it because he was in the boring part of the film for me. I would get rid of all that. So my one change would be getting rid of like half hour of this film. That
including Bill Paxton, unbelievable.
Well, I mean, yeah, but the problem is you brought Bill Paxton in. He's not saving that part for me. If they could rewrite it to have her, because don't get me wrong, at the end of the film, she was perfect as the foil to learning about. So if they could write another way of how she learns he's a spy, I think it'd be perfect. And then you could build Paxton in a different way. I totally agree. But that whole thing about, I'm going to use government resources to make my wife a spy and we're just going to fall in love. It wasn't right for me.
Yeah, counterpoint. I love that part of the film. I love that whole. I love the setup. I love the fact that he's so distraught at the idea of his wife cheating on him. I think Arnie's at his best in the section. Everything with Bill Paxton, I think, is absolutely fantastic. I would watch Schwarzenegger glowering at the screen all day. But what would you change, Dave?
Yeah, so I say counter to your counter of his counter. Here we go. I agree with Wes. The one thing I would say is I wouldn't take the half an hour out. I think they just need to amalgamate it better, because it starts off with terrorists, and then they say, right, we're not going to mention terrorists again for the next 30 minutes. We're going to do something completely different. And then once that started, actually, we forgot. We've got to bring this back in again. It just felt like they shoehorned that in to make the story work.
Yeah, because
I just think it just needed to merge better.
I think Dave is actually right in this, because I'm enamored with aspects of what happened in that middle part of the film, and obviously, Rob, there's parts of it you really disliked, and I think Dave has actually hit the nail on the head, because that is a problem with the film. It's a terrorist movie, then all of a sudden it becomes a Arnie and his wife movie, and it comes at the cost of everything else. And then all of a sudden, like you said, when it's kind of the re-establishing the terrorists in the film, it feels a little bit clumsy, like you've forgotten about the threat, and then suddenly they're like, oh no, remember, this is important. So I think
to the point where there's no explanation about how they get to the hotel room. All of a sudden, they just burst into the hotel room and kidnap them.
Yeah.
Like, where did that? Like, how?
Yeah, even just a couple of little surveillance clips in between saying, "Oh, we know where they are," and then they burst in.
Yeah,
probably would have tied that together a bit better. But
no, I totally agree, because I think I love it, that section in and of itself. Like like when I think about it, it's like I love the stuff, as I said, with Bill Paxton. I love his relationship with his wife and all that jazz. But in terms of how it fits into the film, it is clumsily implemented for sure.
Do you know what it feels like to me? Poor directing. It does. It feels like poor directing. Like he doesn't know what's going on. I do like this section. I think we'll keep this section in. Make a change one. I like this one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I do like it's the first one. I like how red you've gone.
just with anger. Okay, no, it's okay. Cameron's a bad director. He's just trying to wind me up. I know we usually have a music section, but what we decided is, rather than just kind of force that in, we'll talk about the score and the music for a film when it's relevant, when it's interesting.
I thought you were going to say we'll talk about the score during the film talk, and we didn't talk about it once.
no, but that was
it wasn't relevant. I get you.
No,
there was no random song at the end of the credits. Like
no, and the score it's fine, but it doesn't stand out. That's the point.
Yeah.
In terms of video games, there were 4 versions made for this movie. Sorry, all top-down run and gun games developed by Beam Software and published by Acclaim. They were released on the SNES, the Mega Drive, Game Gear, and Game Boy, and they were all rather pansive, truth be told. They were slightly different based on the technology. Obviously, Game Gear and Game Boy are slightly different from the SNES and Genesis / Mega Drive, but basically there were a whole bunch of these video games being made in the 90s. It was the same last week with Demolition Man. They all had these kind of dodgy run and gun games, and this was another one of them. In terms of if you were going to basically make a video game of True Lies today, the answer is it's Naughty Dog.
Naughty Dog.
It is.
It is Naughty Dog.
Yeah, the combination of action, comedy, and storytelling in the Uncharted games, it's a perfect mix for a True Lies game. I could go for a hipster answer, but that's the right answer. It totally is this week. It is Naughty Dog. They would make a fantastic fucking True Lies game.
I think they would. It's basically, you would take like an Uncharted skin and it'd be perfect. I absolutely agree with you. You got the great action set pieces in between the story, the drama, the heart. I think, definitely it'd be a Naughty Dog game all over.
Yeah, even the relationship. Like I always think back to there's that sequence when they're sitting on the sofa and then you can play Crash Bandicoot on the original PlayStation. There's stuff like that, so they can do the home stuff. Obviously, there would maybe be a bit more narrative, but the answer is Naughty Dog for sure.
Yep, wicked.
Okay, so in terms of scores and recommendations, who wants to go first through this? I think we're going to be all over the map. All right, I'll go first because everyone knows how this is going to go. Yes, I would recommend it. I think for the most part, it still holds up. There are certain issues, as you said, with the stunt doubles and some of the misogyny in the film, which make it a very 90s film. Not to mention the fashion. I mean, Arnie wears a sweater vest with no hint of irony. A fucking sweater vest. It was just like everyone lost their mind from a fashion perspective between like 92 and 96. Just everyone dressed like a fucking lunatic. It was really bizarre. But anyway, other than that, I think it totally holds up. Is it Cameron's best film? Absolutely not. It's arguably even, I would say, one of his weakest, but his other films are so fucking good that this could be the 8th or 9th best Cameron film, but it's still a good film. So I'm giving this 4 stars. I think Tony, as I said, that's a big part of it. Arnie's great. The tone's fantastic. I love Jamie Lee Curtis. Despite its faults, easy recommendation, 4 stars.
It's tough. Because I still don't know how I feel about this film. Like, I didn't know how I felt about Demolition Man. Like, I don't want to give it more than Demolition Man, but I don't want to give it less because I don't know actually.
I think you've given your answer there.
Yeah, it's a 3, isn't it? I don't know which would be better. Like if you wanted to compare the two, like this is all the point we did these films. I wouldn't know which one I'd put on top because they both have their moments, but they both have their follies. So, I mean, it's a 3. It's the same. But what I will say, I did say last week I would recommend it as a caveat. I think I would recommend this film, but for not the reasons that people would expect. I wouldn't recommend it because you want to see Schwarzenegger or Jamie Lee Curtis. You want to see, randomly, Tom Arnold, the action, the end sequence, things like that. So it is a recommendation, and it's a 3 stars from me.
And I fit rather nicely in between the two of you here.
Oh, like some form of sandwich. Some kind of filling, you're saying.
God, it's a Dave sandwich.
How erotic things have got at the end of this podcast.
Because, it all comes down to Demolition Man for me. For me, that was a 3-star film, but it was a lot of fun. Whereas this is a much better film. It's not as fun to watch, but it is a better film. So I couldn't give it 3 stars. So I think 3.5 stars. It's just a bit better than Demolition Man. It wins the day for the 2, and I would definitely recommend it because I think it will appeal to more people than Demolition Man would.
I feel like I've said this quite a few times that I was like, well, I think Dave's hit the nail on the head, but I think you're right again in terms of when I'm comparing the two. And I always felt like Demolition Man's not a bad film, and in many respects, it's a really fun film. But I think the fact that it's so fun allowed people to overlook the fact that a lot of that film doesn't work. And it's a relatively poorly made film. Not poorly made film, that's very harsh. But it's not a brilliantly directed film by any stretch. Whereas in terms of direction, this film is miles ahead. You have to look at the action sequences are just leagues. It's not even a conversation. It's miles ahead. But to your point, it's not as fun. And I think a big part of that is, while I have defended Art Malik because he plays it straight, he's no Simon Phoenix for all the will in the world. And I think that is the big thing that, like, if you take Simon Phoenix out of Demolition Man, that film is bang run of the mill. But Wesley Snipes is so good in it that he elevates every other aspect of the film. This film lacks that, but everything else is just a cut above.
Yeah, Demolition Man, like we said, was fun. I mean, it was elevated by Wesley Snipes. That's what gave it a 3 for me. That's what gave you the extra point. But you couldn't overlook its faults, and it had a myriad of them. There were fucking loads of them. I mean, if you started to think about that film, it started to unravel like anything. But if you think about this film, although it may have some faults or it may have stalling points or things like that, it is a better made film. It is a better story. It is shot better. I do agree, but I don't know which one I preferred to sit down. Like, which one I would go, right, I'll watch this one more next. I don't know. There's not a clear standout for me. That's why they're both the same, in my opinion. Because I wouldn't go, I'll go watch Demolition Man, I'll go watch True Lies. At the moment, I probably wouldn't want to watch either of them next. Do you know what I mean? So,
no, I get that. Because I think, again, I don't know what I would cut from it personally. It's a long film, but I think everything, to me personally, I know we have different opinions on that. I feel like the running time feels justified, but it means it's a long film. You're there for a long time. Whereas Demolition Man, it has this kind of like throwaway nature where it's easy to recommend this film, but it's like a proper movie. Like, you are sitting down, you're in it for a long time. Whereas Demolition Man, it's the kind of film you could have happily on in the background, because it's just it's a movie of moments rather than a movie, if that makes sense. So they both have their faults, they both have their strengths. Personally, I can't see beyond the fact that this is just a fundamentally much better made movie. But I get, like, as much as I say, oh, well, this is definitely the better film, if someone said, listen, I just prefer to watch Demolition Man, I'm like, yeah, I kind of get it. But anyway, stick with 4 stars. Do we have anything else to add before we wrap up?
Just the usual in regards to voting for us at the moment. So if anyone wants to vote for us as the Listener's Choice British Podcasting Awards, please feel free. It's British Podcasting Awards Listener's Choice. We are popping the links on all our social media. So that's it for me, really.
And of course, there's one of the big questions.
You voted for us.
I have voted for you. It was a massive pain in the ass. The fucking thing.
Don't say that. Don't say that on the podcast. We're asking people to vote for us.
Apparently, I cannot pick where there's a car in 9 boxes over and over and over again. But eventually we got.
I mean, to be fair, if you're not an idiot like Dave, you'll be able to vote for us fine.
You'll be able to vote. Yeah. Or an idiot like me who forgot to mention what we're actually doing next week. So it's your choice.
So you wrote a closing for this, and it was perfect. And then I wondered, okay, where's this closing coming? Because we have to have said what's next week. So I was a little.
If you have any, I asked you if you had anything to add. You should have added that you wanted what we're going to watch next week. So
well, no, that's not part of the closing. But
I know.
At one point, we will get a proper
We've
closing.
tried to make it a more professional close of this podcast, but I fucked it. So what are we doing next week, Rob?
Well, we're actually going to do what I feel will be your next 5-star movie. We're gonna. I told Dave off pod what we were doing. I don't know why I was really happy when I found this on Disney Plus. But
the fact that you filmed with I don't know why I was happy suggests you know it's shit.
No. I don't know why I was really happy that I found this on Disney Plus. But the fact I've mentioned this film to a couple of people and everyone's gone, really? But I haven't seen it for a while. I really enjoyed it when I watched it. I can't wait to watch it again. It's Deep Rising.
Yep, that's the response we all expected to that. I'm not sure if you're expecting cheers. Deep Rising.
I'll add cheers.
I'm trying to remember how many people have, how many people are aware that this movie exists. It's going to be one of those things, though. I'm going to be critical. There's going to be tons of people online who fucking adore this film now.
Yeah, to the people I said it, they went, Deep Rising? What is that? Oh, never mind. It's starring Treat Williams. Nobody likes Treat Williams, apparently.
Most people, again, you go up to 100 people on the street and say, hey, have you seen any movies with Treat Williams? You know what the response is? Who the fuck is Treat Williams? Yeah, nobody knows who Treat Williams. And then maybe if you show them a picture, they might be like, oh yeah, I've seen him in something. But the fact that they had some weird experiment where we're going to try Treat Williams as a leading man, obviously it didn't go too well.
And then somebody comes to me and goes,
just this?
You see any films with Treat Williams? And I go, yeah, The Substitute 2, School's Out, The Substitute 3, Winner Takes It All. The Phantom. I love Treat
he's in The Phantom. Jesus Christ, Treat Williams. Well,
he's Xander Drax in The Phantom. That's a fucking name. Xander Drax.
Yeah, but it's still Treat Williams behind the name.
Yeah.
So Jesus
do your
Christ.
closing properly.
Okay, well, so we're done. We're done. We don't need. Okay, we're going to wrap this up. All right, so I've been Liam. He's been Rob. That's been Dave. And you've been listening to the Hey Guys podcast. See you next week for Deep Bloody Rising of all things. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Oh, and before we forget, here is Rob with all the finer details. Got to get through those, dude.
Yeah, so basically you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at HeyYouGuys80s. We're also on email at HeyYouGuys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any recommendations, any corrections or omissions we may have missed from any of the films that we've covered. Just get them in. And also, if you could, please leave us some 5-star reviews. That would really help us. And we'd like to thank, as always, Darry Fletcher at Darry Doodles for the fantastic artwork that we're now producing. Thanks for that, mate.
Cheers, Darry.
Yeah. And thanks again for listening, and we will see you next week.
Cheers. Bye. I'm Liam. This is Rob. And this week we are joined by special guest Dave. Fucked it. You said it, didn't you? All right,
yeah.
You can start again.
God.